Your collaborator list is insane in like the best possible way. You've worked with Mary J. Blige, Mariah Carey, Calvin Harris, Lenny Kravitz, Bootsy Collins, CeeLo, Kaytranada. I mean, the list really, truly does go on. What do you think they're hearing in you that makes them say like, I want to work with her?
I don't know. We got to ask them. Let's call them. The biggest compliment is like, oh, I heard this song. Did you produce that? That sounds like you.
It does kind of feel like you're about to enter a new chapter.
Yes, I am.
Which we're very excited for.
It's a very new chapter and I'm very excited.
What's next for Alissia?
You know, I haven't officially, this is kind of the first time I'm talking about it, but I felt like after all these years and working with so many people, I'm like, yep, I know exactly what I want to do. I'm working on an album.
You are the 9th woman ever in history to be nominated for Producer of the Year Grammy Award.
Yeah.
How have you navigated that boys club?
I mean,
you mentioned Prince. Girl, is it true that he slid in your DMs and that's how y'all met?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta tell me the story.
Prince?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spout Podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Dhia, and today we are joined by the very talented 5-time Grammy-nominated producer, Alissia. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you here today because we don't normally get producers on the show, especially like badass women producers.
Thank
so
you.
I'm very excited for this conversation.
Excited to be here.
Yes, let's go. You know, the past year has been so huge for you. You were nominated for a Grammy for Producer of the Year, which in and of itself was historic, but we'll get into that in just a bit. You were also honored at the Resonator Awards.
Yes.
You've been working in music and film. I mean, incredible year. If you were to zoom out and kind of look at the scope of that year, what would be the headline for Alissia?
I feel like, you know, each accomplishment, I'm so thankful and so grateful. And, you know, in the music industry, we always go and work super hard. And I feel like it's always nice to be, you know, taking time to really be thankful for where I'm at and, you know, acknowledge, you know, what I've done. And yeah, so I think I wouldn't pick one specific thing. I think just these moments that you just mentioned are always moments where I'm like, wow, really doing this for a living and I'm grateful for it. So
how did you get into producing?
You know, I was always a music head. I grew up surrounded by music. I started piano at the age of 4 and I always knew I wanted to do music. Then I switched to bass and then bass was a thing. And then I just found myself like organically in the studio and I loved creating. I really loved that. And I was like, whoa, I'm really like, you know, feeling fulfilled when I create. And so that's kind of like what got me started into producing, just, you know, being in the studio very organically.
Yeah. I mean, picking up a bass is not common for a young girl to do. You know, how did you gravitate towards the bass?
I was a big like funk head. I was listening to a lot of like P-Funk, James Brown and Prince and Graham Central Station and the Brothers Johnson and Michael Jackson and all those records. And I was like, okay, bass is what I need to like be playing because I really wanted to like, you know, emulate that, you know, that feeling, that groove that I was listening. And I was like, I think bass is really the instrument that's carrying it. And I was like, let me really, you know, figure this thing out and really fell in love with it. I was like, you know, really shedding every day, like all day. And because I picked up the bass pretty late. So I was like, okay, like I really need to get this thing going. And yeah.
You are the 9th woman ever in history to be nominated for Producer of the Year Grammy Award.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible accolade in and of itself, but it's also kind of a testament to the fact that the producing world is kind of a boys club.
It is. Yeah, for
how
sure.
have you navigated that boys club?
I mean, you know, it's just, I think the reality is obviously there's a big number of men in the music industry as far as like producers, engineers, but also like, you know, musicians and composers. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of incredible women doing the same thing. It's just the opportunities are slimmer. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I do think that we're seeing a bit of improvement now. And yeah, when I found out I was the 9th woman ever to be nominated for Producer of the Year, I was like, this is insane. Like, I can't believe it. It's kind of like sad to hear, but also, you know, I'm just honored to be carrying that, that legacy and of the women that came before me. I mean, they're incredible. And I just really hope that, we see more women in the studio. And I always had to really, kind of like understand and accept that this is, like you were saying, kind of like a man's world in terms of like in the studio type of thing, but always to show up and really be about what I do. And, oftentimes I was always like, okay, I need to like perfect my craft twice as, good as like a guy that's in the studio, just to have like respect in the room. And I think a lot of things that really helped me throughout, especially the beginning when I was first starting, is to really be about the music and really be prepared for the call. And that's a big thing. I always made sure I was like prepared for whatever setting I was in. So
do you find that like when you walk into the rooms, you are kind of fighting for respect initially?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. I feel like I had a glimpse at it first, like as a bass player. I was like, oh, okay. Like, I have to go back at home and like shed a little bit more so that I get actually the same, type of welcoming and respect. And same as a producer, I feel like, it was the type of thing where I had to like have a reason, for them to like respect me. And so be, like I said, like twice as good, or like, have something that's different. But thankfully I had many years of like prepping in terms of like music and music knowledge. And I went to music school. So I learned how to compose and score and like, arrange for horns and strings. And so I had that knowledge and also the musical knowledge, because I spent all these years also just like, practicing instruments and stuff. So that definitely helped me like getting respect in the room when I was walking in. But yeah, I still think, now it's a bit different because I feel like a lot of more people like maybe have a bit of familiarity with who I am now. But like for sure in the beginning it was a bit different.
Yeah. Like breaking down those doors.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of these people that have a little familiarity with your work. Your collaborator list is insane in like the best possible way. You've worked with Mary J. Blige, Mariah Carey, Calvin Harris, Lenny Kravitz, Bootsy Collins, CeeLo, Kaytranada. I mean, the list really, truly does go on.
Yes.
So, when these artists from all these different kind of avenues, really in different genres, call you, what do you think they're hearing in you that make them say like, I want to work with her?
I don't know. We could ask them. Let's call them. I'm not sure. I think, I don't know. I feel like maybe, obviously it always comes down to music, right? And I think, again, for each person is a bit different, and what we collaborated on was, different projects and things like that. And, I think it's just, I guess musicality and just what I do. I guess. I don't know.
Like, what's your process when you're in the studio with like Mary J. Blige versus in the studio with someone like Kaytranada?
Yeah. So that was, so Mary J. Blige, which is actually nominated for Album of the Year, which was crazy. But yeah, so that was actually Anderson Paak, which incredible artist and writer and rapper and musician and producer. He just like does it all. And he called me to work on that project, and we it was really magic in the room. He was, obviously we were like making music for Mary J. Blige, and it just felt natural. When we work, it's just really incredible chemistry. She played some refs, and it was stuff that I loved, like Donald Byrd and, just like stuff that I was like obviously into already, that I listened to every morning. So I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is going to be easy. Like, and the vibe was just amazing, and it was great energy.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Anderson Paak. You guys have worked on a lot of things together.
Yes.
And he's such an insane talent. I mean, the first time I actually discovered Anderson Paak, this was like many years ago, I was at Coachella. And it was like one of those things where you're like walking through the grounds and you hear something coming out of a tent. And you're like, what is that? And then I go in, this was probably like a decade ago. I'm aging myself here. But I like walked into the tent and it was just Anderson on stage. And he would go around the entire stage and play every single instrument. And I feel like that's kind of a lost art in a lot of artists these days, and like a testament to your talent as well as like the multi-instrumentation that you're able to do.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like this should be definitely talked about more. I feel like nowadays, there's a lot of producers and beat makers, and I consider it being two different worlds. But in the sense of, you know, like with AI and everything that's happening, I feel like we're lacking sometimes a little bit of like instruments in the production and musicians. And that's something I really, you know, care for, and to really keep that legacy of like, you know, music, keeping that like live musicianship alive in the studio as well as live, you know, because it's sometimes, you know, I would go to a studio and it would be just like an aux cord and a crazy console, and I'm just like, there's no instrument.
Yeah,
like it's crazy. It's just like people just, you know, and like I always say this, like flipping samples is great, but like it's also up to us. Like Prince would say, like, you know, you're going to be sampling the sample that has already been sampled by the other sample. Like we have to be careful with that. I feel like, you know, and I really just feel like it's in my core to like, as, you know, having that background of a musician, it's, you know, and turned it to like producing now. It's like just more something that like, it's my mission to like do my best to keep, you know, live musicianship, you know, in the studio and collaborate with musicians and yeah, because, you know, it's going really fast now with everything, all the new technology and everything. Of course, back in the days, you had to be a musician to make music, and it was going through tape and everything. And nowadays, it's just like, you know, you could just make music on your phone, not even laptop, you know. So it's really up to us to carry that, you know, legacy. You always think about that when I, you know, make music. So
I think also as the audience, like, you know, you work in punk, or you work in like soul music and like funk, and like there's an element of soul that comes through live musicianship that you don't get through AI in an obvious way, but also in a way when you're listening to something, if you even if you don't know, you're like, oh, this doesn't like it doesn't, you don't feel it.
Yeah, for sure. But also in pop, like, you know, everybody like from, you know, I mean, Olivia Dean, who's doing amazing. All her stuff is a lot of live musicianship, and Sabrina Carpenter and like Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga, even in that like more, you know, pop world, like they're, you know, using like live, you know, instruments and stuff on songs. And, you know, it's really actually, you know, as a producer, that's something I've always like admired, when it's a good balance between live, but it's still, you know, it still sounds like a record, you know. And it's always like a thing where, you know, in the studio, you obviously want to, you know, include live instruments, but it's always like, you don't want to overplay, you don't want to like make it sound too like live, right? So it's always like, I really admire like a lot of people for executing that really well. But yeah.
Yeah. You know, I touched on this a little bit, but like there's a lot of funk in your DNA of the music that you do, a lot of soul, R&B, pop, you know, like the live musicianship that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
When somebody who's never heard your work asks like, what does Alissia sound like? What would you tell them?
I sound like me.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, for sure. I mean, obviously those are all huge influences, you know, when if, you know, but I love listening to all sorts of music. I'm really, obviously, I guess, you know, people know me for a certain style and certain thing, right? But like, you know, I really love all kinds of music. And I think that, I don't know, I think I sound like me, I hope.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest compliment is like, oh, I heard this song. Did you produce that? It sounds like you. When I hear that, I'm like, hell yeah. Okay. We're on the right track.
Yeah. You know, you also co-produced songs on Mariah Carey's latest album, Here for It All, which debuted at #1 across like multiple Billboard charts.
Yes.
What was it like working with Mariah?
Amazing. Again, that was another Anderson .Paak thing where we just kind of got in the studio with the Queen, Mariah Carey. And, you know, it was just really, it felt really good and natural. I mean, it's the type of thing where I love like working in the studio where the artist is there. That's another lost form kind of thing where it's like now, you know, as producers, like people get together and writers and they pitch for people. But I mean, we're making music, you know? So it's like, I always feel like it's very important to sit down with the artist, see where they're at, what they want to talk about sonically, where they want to go, maybe challenge them to go somewhere. And it's like, I really like live for that. And and working with Mariah was like incredible, and I'm so grateful I got to like produce and write on that album. It was really fun times, and it felt really, like I said, very natural, and just good. You can feel when the energy is good in the studio and you're inspired, and it was amazing. She was amazing too.
Like, what's the process like with Mariah though? Because she's been in the industry for so long, and she's such a legend, and her voice is so iconic. And I feel like she probably knows exactly what she wants.
Yeah. So, I mean, she definitely is incredible to work with, and she definitely knows like what she likes versus like, let's maybe work on this. But she was so open-minded, and she welcomed us really well. And so it was great because like, I remember the first song is actually one of the songs that went to #1 for like 4 consecutive weeks, which was crazy. In Your Feelings, which is the one, I was starting some chords on really the roads, and I was like dying to do a ballad at that moment. Like that time, it was like weeks that I was just like, in my studio, just working out chords. And like, I was like, I'm dying to do like an epic ballad. And then, I got that call to work on her stuff. And it was like, oh my God, that's like, we need to bring back the Mariah, like iconic ballads. And then, and I feel like we fed off of each other's energy so quick. And, just like I said, like the energy in the room was so good. And, it was, we, started with the chords on Roads, and then, Anderson was writing all the lyrics, and Ray Khalil, and, it was really just like good. And Mariah, and she was like, they were going off of each other thing, and it was written really just in like almost like a day, like, I mean, then we finished it later and stuff, but it was, just amazing.
Just like magic.
Yeah. It just really flew.
I think you might be getting a little bit too in your feelings. I might spare a moment for a picture, and you can take it as I'm leaving.
You've mentioned working with Anderson a few times, and it does seem like when he sees talent, he like holds on to it because he's brought you onto multiple projects.
Yeah, we did a few projects together for sure. And it's always been, it's always been great, and it's always fun. Like I was saying, his musicianship too is like always fun, right? Because he's a drummer, I'm a bass player. On the musicianship side is always fun. But, I really respect him for like, really bringing me on and in some projects, and always, giving me, space to like do what I do as well, which is, really, it's really nice. It's really nice.
I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Speaking of Anderson, that he introduced you to Bruno, and there might be a song of yours somewhere in the vault somewhere with Bruno.
Wow, things leak super quick. No, so I mean, actually, so there was a song that we did. So yes, he definitely introduced me to Bruno. They were working on the Silk Sonic album, which was so amazing. And that's, I actually put them in touch with Bootsy Collins because I had produced Bootsy's album before. And, Bootsy's a huge mentor of mine. And so I, Bruno and Anderson wanted to have Bootsy on their album. And so, I introduced them. And so then, I started to get to know Bruno, and he's so incredible. He's so amazing. And, but we had done a song together that went on a movie, Shang-Chi movie. So Bruno like co-wrote it with Anderson, and that's something we did together. And then, I mean, we got in the studio with Bruno. Like it was great. He's so incredible. Go listen to the new album.
Yeah,
he just dropped. Yeah, it's amazing. He's just another really so talented, multi-talented person.
Yeah. What's it like being in the studio with Anderson and Bruno? Because I feel like just from what we've seen, they have such a funny chemistry with each other, and they just seem to like always be messing with each other.
Yeah, they are. And they really are. And I feel like, there's no surprise that Silk Sonic was such a great project because like just, being with them together, they're just the chemistry they have. And also like this feeling of like, not taking everything too seriously. Like they feed off of each other's energy, and they're like really always joke around, and like, and it's really important, when you're like, I don't know, when you're creating in the studio to really always remember to have fun. And they both always remind me to, because sometimes, obviously it becomes a job and it's like your work and stuff, but like, it's really important to remember why you started in the first place, you know, and remember to like, just have fun. Like, you know, this is work and we're all trying to make the best music we're trying to make. But at the end of the day, like, you know, always remember that really that, you know, passion and that grind and that energy you had when you first started.
I feel like a lot of people now are kind of on the conversation of like the music business being too serious and the creativity getting stripped out of it. Do you feel that?
I mean, we're not going to get too controversial today.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to get controversial. Just a
No, I'm joking. No, totally. I think that, I think that, you know, back then it was just like you had an artist and you had labels and they would see this artist and they would see the potential and they would take time to develop their sound and their image and their creative direction. And it was like so much to it. And then really developing, and I feel like the art of like really developing an artist versus signing someone that is viral on a platform is very different, right? Because one is talent and the other one is more like money, right? Which is a business at the end of the day, you know? So, you know, obviously the labels, they got to make money, but at the same time, it's like, you know, I always make sure that, you know, whoever I work artist wise, that is, you know, I'm there for the talent and I'm never there for the money. I think there's a saying like, as soon as, you know, you walk in the room for money, God seizes or something like that. Or it's like, I definitely like, you know, it's really important to keep that, you know, energy and always do it for the music. Yeah. At least that's my motto. So
it's a good motto. You mentioned Bootsy Collins earlier, and you actually recently posted an IG video of yourself and you were singing in the video, and he commented, "What a thrill to see you singing."
Oh, I was on the vocoder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you going to be doing more vocals?
Maybe. So it's the vocoder is basically an instrument. It's similar to the talkbox. People might be familiar with that, but it's really just you know, just a mic going through a synth, and it sounds a bit like robotic in a certain way, like to put it into simple words. But, you know, I was a huge Headhunters and Herbie Hancock fan, you know, when I still now, but like, you know, especially when I started making music. So it really became full circle for me because, you know, I was like, okay, like, you know, I'm working on a project now and an album that, you know, has features and stuff. But I was like, I'm really wanting to, you know, develop kind of something that is just not necessarily instrumental, but something where there's something different. And I felt like, you know, obviously Daft Punk, you know, they did so amazing with that. And I was like, it's been a while, like since, you know, I heard like, you know, something like that. And I was like, I just like, you know, I haven't officially, this is kind of the first time I'm talking about it, but I felt like, you know, it's the right time because I've been so inspired and so excited about it. And then, so I've been working with Anthony Marinelli, who did all the sounds on Thriller by Michael Jackson. And he's been inspiring me so much as far as like sounds and dialing in the right like vocoder tones and everything. So the answer is yes.
Okay, that's exciting.
Definitely more on singing on the vocoder for sure.
That's exciting.
Coming, yeah.
And you mentioned working with Anthony, who worked on Thriller.
Yes.
And I saw that you also were using one of the instruments that were used on Thriller. Is that the vocoder?
So crazy story actually. You know, I had I had an interview with Anthony originally, and then I told him, hey, I'm like, you know, trying to like dial this tone and find this vocoder and stuff. And he was like, okay, I would love to like help you with that. And so I had some studio time to work on my album stuff, and I was like, if you want to come like these days, and he brought all his gear, and it's all the original gear he brought to the Thriller sessions by Michael. Yeah. Which is so crazy because I was like, oh my God, like I was touching it, like it was like, oh, you know, it's crazy to just, you know, just the idea of it, that it was like in those sessions at that time. Because that's like my favorite album of all time is Thriller.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, but like, and it was the biggest album of all time, but it's really like, yeah, it was crazy. So yeah, he brought his Moog, the original Moog, the Lindrum, the original, all of the original stuff, the Jupiter 8. And he brought all this like stuff to the studio. And I was like, whoa, like this is crazy.
You had the spirit of Michael convincing you to sing.
Like, come on, give me this energy with these synths and stuff. I love it.
Yeah. I mean,
love it. It was so much fun.
Michael Jackson obviously is like
Yeah.
arguably the best artist of all time.
He really
so-
is. And I'm so excited to see the movie.
I know, me too. I cannot wait.
I can't wait.
Even just the trailer, I was like,
I
I
know.
miss him so much.
I know. It's going to be so amazing. And yeah, I mean, it looks like they did an amazing job too. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Very excited. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Michael, you've said that Quincy Jones has been your biggest inspiration.
Yeah.
And you had the opportunity to meet him.
I did. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So that was so Greg Fillingades, shout out to Greg. You know, he was also like on all those records and incredible, like, you know, player, composer, everything. And he was just like, you know, let me introduce you to Quincy one time in New York. And so I got to sit down with him and yeah, the conversation. The first question was like, what's your zodiac sign? And I was like, okay. Leo, I hope I'm answering right. I hope this is the right answer. I don't know what he was gonna say. He was like, oh, okay, so this, and that. And like he, you know, it was just like a funny like intro
Quincy
to like
Jones is into astrology?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this.
I was, you know, and it was so funny because I was like, hi, like, I'm such a huge fan. Like, you know what I'm saying? So nice to meet you. I'm Alissia, like, I'm a producer, I'm a musician, I'm this, and that. And he was like, I know who you are. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and then he was like, what's your astrology sign? That's the first question. I was like, okay, so Leo. And he was like, oh, okay, so you know what you want, and you this and this and that. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. And but then it was just about like, it wasn't really about even music conversation. It was just about life, like, you know, and just broader. I mean, obviously like related to music, but it wasn't, you know, I had so many questions and I was just like, I don't know what to, you know, it's one of those things when you meet like your idol and you just like kind of stuck. It was the same thing when I was like met Bootsy for the first time. It was just like, you know, but yeah, Quincy was definitely, you know, very supportive of what I do. And even his team had reached out and everything. And, you know, rest in peace. He was just such a legend and such a had such a huge impact on the music industry. I mean, even, you know, still now, and I'm sure, you know, for the next generations, he'll be such a big inspiration for producers and composers and arrangers, musicians, everything.
You know, I think a lot of people think of meeting their idols. And like you said, once you get in front of them, you're like, where do I start? Yeah. What was your first question to Quincy?
To Quincy? I didn't even get to ask him. Like I was saying, I was just, everything became blank because I was just so, you know, I was answering his questions. He had so many just random questions. First was the astrology thing. Then it was, have you been to Montreux? Have you did this? Have you did that? Have you met Prince? Did you play? Like, it was just so many questions that was like, you know, like coming at me. I was like, and you know, I was just, I don't know. I had so many, and I wish I would have like written down somewhere all my questions. I didn't really get to ask him. I feel like it's also the type of questions I would have loved to like really have time to like sit down properly, because it was like people around
really quick.
Yeah, so it wasn't like you know, a calm space. So anyways, it was I'm so glad I got to meet him.
Did he give you any advice or anything?
He definitely, like, you know, mentioned to always, you know, do it for the love of music. That was his big thing too. I feel like so
you mentioned Prince.
Yes.
Girl, is it true that he slid in your DMs and that's how y'all met? You gotta tell me the story.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy thing because at the time I was in college and I was gigging, and I randomly put out like some videos on YouTube, and that kind of went viral and all that stuff. And then he somehow saw those videos, and because I was covering The Time, which is one of his earlier bands like that he started with, Morris Day and everything. And yeah, he just, I received one morning, I wake up and I just like, Prince, like on Twitter. I wasn't even using really Twitter like that, but I was like, what the heck? And then, you know, I was like, okay, now this is definitely a prank, that this can't be it. And then, you know, I knew already some of his musicians, and someone I was really close to was John Blackwell, rest in peace. He was his drummer from NPG for many, many years. And he was like, mark my words, Prince is going to call you, so just might as well get ready for it. And he really like already was like kind of like training me for the call. So I was definitely ready at that time when I was like, okay, if that's really Prince, then. But then I asked him and a few other musicians. I was like, is it Prince, you think? And he was like, they were like, yeah, he does his own Twitter, and like that's definitely him. And then it became really real when his like person reached out, when his team reached out and stuff. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, but yeah, the first move was the sliding in the DM.
Oh my gosh,
crazy. Yeah.
The idea of Prince on Twitter, like
Crazy.
or on YouTube, just like looking at videos.
I know, but I think from what I've heard, he was very much into like what's the new music, and the next generation and the talent, and he was very, very into like real musicians, like really people. So he was really always looking out for like the new talent, the new artists, the new musicians that are doing, their thing. And I heard he really was on there on YouTube and stuff. And like, yeah. So
I love that. I mean, rest his soul, but I feel like that's also encouragement to other people
really
that are creators. Like, just put your stuff out there. You genuinely never know like who's going to see it.
You really, and man, I would have never thought. I remember when I was putting the videos out, like I was like, never thought of that. But obviously, it was every musician's dream to get a Prince call, every artist's dream. And, but yeah, it's important to put your stuff out there for sure.
Did you ever get to meet him?
I never got to actually meet him because the first time they asked me to come to Paisley Park, they were saying he's putting a new band together and he wanted me to like, come play with him and see how the energy and synergy was with him. And I was so young. I had a show the next day and I was like, I'm happy to come, but I just can't come the next day or the day after or something. And I was like, but I'm free next week, and they were like, never mind, something like that. Yeah. And then I just never heard back. And I was like, oh my God. And then they reached out a second time. And that second time they flew me out to Minneapolis. And so I got there at the airport and stuff. And then I was like, well, I'm not hearing back. And it was like a bit of a weird time. And then I found out he was sick. And that's when they did like an emergency landing. And it was just like, yeah. But I mean, I'm still glad I got to get those calls. And the only time I actually met him, but it wasn't really like a sit down meeting. It was just like kind of like nice to meet you type thing. It was at Montreal Jazz Festival at his private like jam session. Mm-hmm. I was there by chance, and it was kind of like a quick hello from afar because he was playing and stuff. So, yeah. Does
Prince have an aura? I feel like
he does. Oh yeah, like when he walks in a room, you can just feel that he's there. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah,
he just like brings that like really incredible energy, and and it's just always like, oh my God, this, because a lot of musicians, not only writers and producers and artists, have respect for like musicians. Like for us, it's like we really also look up to him for, his musicianship and just the musicians he got around. He always had around the best players, and so yeah.
Oh man, what a legend. Well, you've got the credits, the respect, the cosigns.
Thank you.
I mean, truly incredible career.
Thank you so much.
So it does kind of feel like you're about to enter a new chapter.
Yes, I am.
Which we're very excited for.
It's a very new chapter and I'm very excited.
What's next for Alissia?
So this is now entering the, I'm working on an album, like I was saying. So I'm very excited for the artist phase, and I've had a glimpse at it years ago, but I think, one thing, I wasn't fully ready and knowing what I wanted to do. And I think now, after all these years and working with so many people, I'm like, yep, I know exactly what I want to do. Like, and what, also what I want to hear, in music. And I mean, the music is just, I'm so proud. It's just so incredible and something I've been working on for several years. So I'm really excited for the world to hear it. I just released the first single last year, and last year, Hypnotic Night, featuring Earth Gang and Nile Rodgers, the legendary Nile. But yeah, that was like such an incredible feeling for me, after all these years of like just being behind the scenes, just stepping into like more of the spotlight. It was, but again, it's always about the music for me. So yeah, I'm really excited about this new phase. Yeah.
When can fans expect the album?
Definitely trying if everything works out, to put it out before the end of the year.
All right.
And if not that, definitely
knock on wood,
singles.
We're ready.
Yes. Definitely singles coming your way. One very, very special one coming out soon. So I can't talk too much about it, but stay tuned.
We're very excited. We're ready for you to be in the spotlight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming.
Great vibes.
Oh, yay. Welcome. Thank you.